So a quick little history about this 135. It is a 2009. It does have the N54 motor in it. I bought this car just under a year ago for $5,000 without a motor. It was missing quite a few things, and the car was in pretty bad shape. It had been sitting at a shop for a little over 2 years in the grass, not running. Paint was in terrible condition, all kinds of things. So it needed a lot of work, but those tend to be the perfect projects for me because I knew that I wanted to convert this thing to a 1M clone. I personally really wanted to challenge myself on this build, so I made sure that I did the majority of the work outside of actually installing the motor itself, and CES Motorsport here in North Carolina helped me out with that. If you guys are interested in any of the modifications or any of the parts that are being used in this video, or how to convert your 135 to a 1M clone, there is going to be a Google Doc sheet in the description that is going to have every single part listed, as well as links to the parts, prices of the parts, and even part numbers if they are OEM parts. That should help you guys build your 135 or 1M clone if you so desire. All right, so 2009 135 with the N54, but this is of course a 1M clone. It looks extremely good in my opinion. One of my favorite cars that I've built on this channel, hands down. It is just so beautiful. So I suppose first we can just talk about the aesthetics, everything that you guys see on the outside, cosmetic upgrades for this car. So I actually used all OEM 1M parts from BMW, minus the rear quarter panels or flares, which are actually fiberglass flares that we bonded to the car, fiberglass and painted to make sure that it looked as seamless as possible, like a real 1M. So we've got the 1M front bumper, we've got the 1M fenders, we've got the 1M side skirts, we've got the 1M replica fiberglass rear flares, and then we have the 1M rear bumper. I do have a simple M Performance carbon fiber lip spoiler. That is OEM BMW, super clean, very simple. OEM diffuser, and also OEM 1M mirrors, which are actually the same as the E9X M3 mirrors. The hood is a Sabon carbon fiber hood, is the BM style, but when the car went into paint, I opted to have the entire thing paint matched, and then I just left the vents exposed, which I think looks really clean, almost looks OEM. I just love the fact that this hood is a little bit different and it looks a lot like the E9X M3 hoods. Just something a little bit more unique than the factory hood that comes on the 135 or 1Ms. I also went with the IND paint matched side markers, so this car is jet black. It's a beautiful color, very, very deep black. And then I also have the American Panda Shadow Line badges to just sort of complete that blackout look, as well as the OEM BMW M Performance blacked out grills. As far as some of the other aftermarket cosmetic parts, we have a Souvenir carbon fiber front lip, which I absolutely love. That thing is sick. It's very, very simple. Have the carbon fiber side skirt extensions, also very simple, and that is it. Didn't do much to this car. This car did actually come with the Euro style LED taillights, which look really, really good. But yeah, outside of cosmetics on the exterior, that is it. I really didn't do too much. These are hood latches that I actually got off of Amazon and installed, but they've worked really, really well. Being that this hood is carbon fiber, it's just really smart to be running hood latches at all times so that thing doesn't fly up on you. As far as suspension and wheels, this car actually came with ST coilovers, which are really not that great. I have not upgraded anything in the suspension with the coils or camber plates or arms or bushings because I have some plans here in the future, and basically everything that's 135 is just not going to make sense on this car anymore. So if you know what that means, you probably know where I'm headed, but we'll talk a little bit about that later. These are the Apex VS5 RSs in Motorsport Gold. They look freaking insane. By far my favorite set of wheels, especially on this car. They just suit the black so well. The contrast is absolutely beautiful. If I didn't go for this color, I would have gone for the silver just for a nice clean contrast, but I love the way that these look. I am running the Falcon Zenny RT 615s, and they are 265/35 in the front and 275/35 in the rear. These are 18s, so 18s on all four corners. And so this is actually a E9X M3 fitment for these wheels, so I can actually flip them back and forth from my E92 M3. But in order to make that happen with the rear end of this car, you do have to run the F-Chassis 3 Series rear hub. So this does have a F-Chassis 3 Series rear hub conversion, which allows you 10 millimeters more of offsets. So basically it pushes everything in, so you can then run a wider wheel and a wider tire. And that's how I'm able to fit this E9X M3 fitment on this car. So the bones underneath, basically still 135 diff, trans, engine, suspension, braking, everything 135. Has not been upgraded, but again, you guys will hear in the future future here why I have not done that yet. Overall, cosmetically, absolutely love the way that this car looks, and I would not change a thing. Some people say you should try running a carbon rear diffuser. Really don't like the way that any of those look, to be completely honest. The side skirt extensions were even something that I was on the fence about, but I do think that these flow quite nicely with the front lip. The front lip is a little bit more aggressive, but I don't think it's over the top. I think it suits this car really well, and I think the side skirt extensions just sort of even out the flow with that front lip. It is, however, an extremely low lip, so this car is, you gotta be careful when you're driving this car. Do have the floating center caps, also by American Panda. They are blacked out shadow line version. I think they look really good. One thing that I am possibly going to be doing in the future, more than likely will, is I'm going to be removing the sunroof on this car. So if you guys know the 1Ms, they all come in a slick top, not a carbon fiber roof, but basically just a sunroof delete. What I would like to do with this car is actually install a carbon fiber roof. There's a few different companies that make them, and with this car being the type of build that it is and what it's going to be, it sort of makes sense to just go all in and do a carbon fiber roof. I think that would just be like the icing on top. Let's talk engine and performance. So as you guys recall, in the beginning I was saying that I bought this car without a motor. I ended up picking up a motor from my friends over at CES Motorsport for $2,500. The motor that I ended up purchasing had a little over 100,000 miles on it, and it wasn't in the best condition. So I went ahead and did a full walnut blast. I ended up changing out the rod bearings myself, and then we ended up doing all of the necessary maintenance items. Did a new valve cover gasket, obviously, oil pan gasket, a new timing chain guide because the one on my motor was broken. I did also do the crank hub capture plate on this car. And then for the transmission, I ended up going with a DKM twin disc clutch, which I really, really like. It's rated for over 1,000 horsepower, but this car will never see 1,000 horsepower, so plenty and plenty of room. But outside of that, it's pretty basic. It's just got bolt-ons. It has the Musselman upgraded twin turbos, has obviously the Doc Race intake manifold. It is set up for port injection. I do have the injectors in and everything. However, my reflex is not installed, so it is not actually running port injection. I do have Motive at home. We just have not had time to install it. I've been way too busy, but it is on my list of things to accomplish. I did do the Precision Raceworks coil packs. I know these are kind of controversial. Some people say that they're trash. I've had zero issues with them, but then again, I'm not really pushing a whole lot of power out of this car. It is tuned. It's on a base map tune by CD919, who's tuned quite a few of my cars, and he's fantastic. If I had to guess, it's probably making somewhere in the 500 wheel on pump gas. I do have the Musselman oil thermostat as well as the Musselman oil cooler. So right behind this vent up here is the Musselman oil cooler, and then I've actually converted this side over to the auxiliary radiator. So it's running the 335 1M auxiliary radiator, which is just another OEM piece that I installed. So this duct will take in air for a radiator. This side will take in air for the oil cooler. However, there are options to run dual oil cooler setups on these cars, but I really didn't think that that was necessary. I kind of liked the idea initially of just keeping it OEM as possible and putting the auxiliary radiator on that side. Down below, I do have a CSF front mount intercooler. I do have the upgraded intakes. I do have the BMS oil catch can. I did relocate my power steering reservoir, gave my throttle body a nice little polish, Doc Race charge pipe, tile blow-off valve, and this is the Turner Motorsports coolant tank reservoir. It's actually made for a 335, but it does fit the 135 if you can get a little crafty. Some of these brackets I made myself. Some of them I found from other pieces, but I just wanted everything to be as clean as possible. And yeah, I'm really happy with the way that most of this turned out. I think it looks really good for an N54. This does also have the Index 12 injectors running on it at the moment. I also ended up doing the E9X M3 strut bars and strut bar assembly, and then I also did the DIY little cowl delete, which I think just looks a lot better for these cars. So if you've ever sort of built the car up from scratch, you end up making a lot of calls along the way that are just sort of while you're there modifications, which basically means while you're there, you might as well just upgrade it. As far as the exhaust system, I am running Catalyst downpipes into a custom midsection into a Super Sprint rear section. So it was really important for me when building this car that the car had a 1M exhaust system. And in order to do this, it's not as easy as it seems. Some people would think, well, why don't you just slap on a quad tip exhaust system? You could run a custom exhaust, but it would be kind of wonky, and I just wanted to do things as correctly as possible with this car. So So I ended up doing a lot of things in order to make that happen. There's entire videos on all this stuff, by the way, you guys, if you're interested in seeing them or building a car like this. But basically what you have to do in order to do that is you have to change out the entire battery tray. You have to change out some of the evap lines down below, and then you have to run a 1M battery, which is also different from a 135 battery. So once you do all that, you then have room to run the quad exhaust system. And overall, I'm really happy with it. I think it looks really good. I think it sounds really good. There are definitely going to be cheaper ways to accomplish that if you want to. However, for me personally, I just wanted to do everything as correctly as possible. I'd say the only part on this build where I didn't really go full gas would be the rear quarters, which are currently fiberglass, but down the line, I actually will end up going with the OEM metal rear quarter panels. Now you can buy these rear fiberglass quarter panels online. I have them linked down below in that spreadsheet. They're about $500. My friend and I ended up doing the majority of bodywork ourselves. It is quite extensive and it is a pretty big project to take on, but I wanted to make sure that the rear quarters were done correctly, being that you are bonding a fiberglass material to a metal material. There are a lot of precautionary steps that need to be taken in order to make sure that that bond is good and you don't have any failures. The only thing that I did not do was the final shaping and the painting, because the body shop wanted to handle that themselves. So everything that was repainted would be the entire rear quarter panel blended into the pillar up there. The roof was not painted and the trunk was not painted. Everything else was resprayed in jet black. Rear quarter, doors, side skirts, rear bumper, fenders, hood, front bumper, and mirrors. Overall, I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. It looks really, really good. I paid $5,000 for the body shop to handle all of that. I think that that's really fair considering there's quite a bit of work to do on the rear quarters to really blend that and make it perfect. Lots of sanding. And finally, of course, the painting. That is very difficult to do, especially if you're doing it the right way. Now, the reason that I was saying that I am going to end up going over to the OEM quarter panels is because you have to remember all it will take is one tire to hit that rear quarter and it's game over. The force of that tire hitting the fiberglass will inevitably end up breaking or cracking the rear quarters, and longevity wise, you're just better off with metal. So when I take the dive to go into the carbon fiber roof, which is a glass out job, we are also going to be doing the rear quarters in metal. And at that point, it's going to be basically bulletproof. I'll be able to run a much more aggressive tire setup where I don't have to be as cautious from the tires hitting the rear quarters. Now, personally, I think the decision to run the fiberglass quarters versus the real OEM metal quarters is obviously a personal one, and it's going to depend on what you plan on doing with the car. Right now, this car is really just a street car and a show car. So running the fiberglass quarters is completely fine for that sort of application. But if you want to do what I'm going to do to this car and you want to really be able to push it and drive it, OEM metal quarters is going to be the way to go. It is for sure going to cost you a bit more in order to do that, obviously, because each quarter panel is about $1,500 from Germany. So you're talking $3,000 just for the material. And then of course you have to do the welding, you have to do the disassembly, you have to do the reassembly, you have to do the painting. It's a lot of work, so it is going to take quite a bit more labor and money to accomplish that, but in the long run, depending on the build, it might make more sense. Now we will talk a little bit about the interior. So this car actually did have the full red interior. As you can tell, I basically went all black minus the door cards. I am still on the fence as to whether I want to change these to Alcantara, but we will see in the future. I do have some upgraded trim pieces that are from Colorado N5X. These are okay. The only thing that I don't love about them is they're not Alcantara, they are suede, and I don't really love the stitching. So these are going to be getting redone in real Alcantara, so it just flows better with the interior and matches better. This piece up here is by Kobe Wheel, and it sort of mimics the real 1M instrument cluster bezel, which has like the orange on it. I just went black on black. This is real Alcantara, and it looks freaking amazing. This is not real Alcantara, this is suede, and you can visually see quite the difference between the two. This just looks very, very cheap compared to this, and this obviously matches my Recaro Sportsters much better. So yes, I am running the Recaro Sportsters in this car. I have the pole positions in my E92 M3, just a different vibe, and it's nice to be able to access the rear. This fire extinguisher is made by H3R, and the mount I actually made myself, just sort of a custom bracket in order to mount it back here without having to drill any new holes. It actually turned out really good. This rear net and carpet setup is by Stern Performance. Again, something just a little bit different. I didn't want to do your traditional cage and rear seat delete. Kind of like the idea of just running something like a netting and carpet, and I think it turned out pretty cool. This steering wheel is by Aza Auto Wheel, and the idea behind designing this custom wheel, they do all of my custom wheels in my car, but the idea behind designing this specific custom wheel is I sort of wanted to blend my E36 M3 steering wheel and my M4 GTS wheel. So I went with an all Alcantara theme as well as the finishing trim piece in Alcantara, and I left the rest alone. The only thing it has is the M stitching, and that's it. It's very, very simple and basic. It's a little bit thicker than factories. It just feels a little bit better, but I think that turned out really, really good. I do have the OEM 1M door sills. I am running the OEM Alcantara shift boot with the ZHP shift knob. This is also just cheap Amazon suede, so this will be getting changed out as well. And then I also did the factory armrest delete, which I think just looks a lot cleaner. I'll admit the interior is not completely done. There are things that I need to do. Most importantly, we got to change out the headliner and everything. But again, if I'm doing carbon fiber roof, there's really no point in doing that right now because we are going to have to delete the sunroof portion. So this is all going to be black. It is going to be a slick top headliner, and then obviously the pillars will be black as well. The instrument gauges, these mimic the E9X M3 instrument gauge faces. Look really cool. So I would say overall, the interior is like 60% of the way there. There is some work that needs to be done. One thing I did almost forget was the Walbro 450 low pressure fuel pump, which I do have in this car. I do have another 450 at home. I was going to run basically two low pressure fuel pumps, one to provide fuel to the port injection, and then the original to provide the fueling to the direct injection. That way all fueling would be covered. However, I'm going a different direction. So there's a lot of things that I was going to do that are no longer going to happen because of the future plans of this car. So what are the future plans? Basically, we are going to be converting this car into a 1M clone that has the S65 and E9X M3 components. So the plans are to find a manual E9X M3 donor car, basically one from Copart or one that has been in an accident, and we are going to be completely refreshing the S65 V8 motor. Now, before I get into the what's in house, I just want to say there's nothing wrong with the N54 motor. I think it's a fantastic motor for what it is. You can obviously make a ton of power with these engines, and they are wildly popular in the BMW community. I would say outside of the B58s, the N54s are the runner-up to the most popular BMW engine, especially when it comes to modifying and making big power relatively easily. However, for me, it has always been a dream of owning a 1 Series with the S65 platform in it. And the great thing about that swap is it's really not too bad. So to give you guys an idea of what we are going to do exactly, I'm going to find myself a salvaged E9X M3. Everything that we need to swap this thing over to the heart and the bones of an E9X M3 into the E8X 1M body. Both subframes will be E9X M3. The brakes will be E9X M3, but I'll likely do a conversion to the F8X, very similar to how I have my E92 M3 set up. Suspension will be E9X M3, and while we are there, I'm going to be cleaning the underside of the car, probably doing an entire dry ice session and video for you guys. This thing is going to be insanely mint when I'm done building it. With the V8 on the E9X subframe, that sucker is going to bolt right up into the E82, and that's something that I just love about that swap. The fact that that thing just slides right in there and bolts directly up. It's like it was meant to be, you guys. And the way that the S65 just sounds and drives and responds in this little chassis is going to be so much fun. My biggest complaint about this car right now is when you drive it, it just doesn't really feel that great because everything is 135 in it. Now 135 is just not built like an M car. It's not built like my E92 M3. And the way that my E92 M3 drives is absolutely perfect, in my opinion. The way that the suspension is, the way that it handles, the way that it sounds, just all of the feelings that that car gives you is just, it's so good. And I want this car to feel like that, but in this body. I really, truly believe that that is going to be one of the most perfect builds that you can build. And it's not like this hasn't been done before. This is a pretty common swap, but the way that I'm going to be doing it is just on a higher level. I'm really gonna challenge myself to make sure that we completely go through that motor, refresh everything, basically give it the same treatment that we did on the N54, and it's going to sound so freaking amazing. So yes, unfortunately, our beloved N54 will be coming out of this car at that point. Now, I plan on doing this all over the winter. Right now, you know, it's the middle of summer, and I'm just enjoying this car. I'm just driving it. We put so much work and time into it that sometimes you just gotta step back and be able to enjoy what you've built for a little bit before you put the thing back under the knife. But yeah, you guys, overall, that is the goal here. We're gonna convert this thing over to a 1M clone that has the heart and the bones and the structure of an E9 XM3, and I think it's going to be absolutely sick. So there you guys go. I think that that pretty much breaks down everything for you guys, a little bit about everything that we've done so far in the past year on this car and all of the modifications that we've put on this car, what it actually took. There's also pricing in that document, in that sheet that's linked down below if you guys are interested in how much it costs to build this thing at this point. It's obviously going to be going way up once we do all of the S65 work, but I think in the end it's going to be worth it. And this is really just one of those cars that's already a car that you never get rid of. You keep because it's just an incredible build. And again, you guys, putting the S65 and the heart and the structure and the bones and the subframes and everything into this 1M clone body has been a forever dream of mine. So that is really why I'm going for it. There's no reason not to. I've already put so much time and money into this car that I might as well build the one that I want to build. I had a lot of people asking me, well, you already have an E92 M3. Aren't you going to be bored of the S65 platform, or aren't you going to miss the N54? No, in my opinion, I'm not. I really, really, truly love the E9X platform with the S65, and I'm just that much more excited now that I'm more familiar with it to see how it responds in this little car. I think it's going to be insane. Anyways, you guys, thank you so much for watching the video. Like I said, all the resources are linked down below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you like it. If you're new here, make sure you subscribe. But that is it. We're going to wrap this one up. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.